Hello and welcome to this asteroids tutorial. In this tutorial we'll get it set up and then we'll get hopefully the ship moving. Now I'm just going to do a couple things like I like to do usually here. Set the 2x3 and pull this guy down here. And we'll also set up the camera. This time I'm going to use a 4x3 like the traditional TV, so it's a bit more square. And then on my camera I'm going to set that background to black, because if we're going to make asteroids, we should have a black background. Good. Now a couple little things that you'll be able to download. There's a graphics folder that will have our graphics for pretty well everything that we need at the moment. There will be also the UFO and so on. Those aren't just present here at the moment. And then also some sounds. And I think we'll need a few more sounds as well at some point. But we've got enough here to get some progress here. So first thing that we'll do is, like I said, get that ship going. So there is a graphic here, which is the ship. And I'll just simply bring it in. And for the moment, we'll leave that size as it is. If we need to make it smaller, we can. This is going to be an object that's going to require a little bit of force, so we will add a rigid body to that, and also a collider, because we'll need that too. So I'm just going to add a rigid body 2D, and just make sure, as usual, we turn off gravity here. We don't need it falling. And then the other thing, of course, is a collider, and I think, let me just check here. Let's just go in here, physics 2D. I think we can get which one did I use? Probably a polygon collider. And let's just zoom in on that and just see. And a little complicated, but probably fine for our needs. We could make it a bit simpler, but I think that's going to be okay for this game. I mean, we're not pushing it with too much in terms of graphics. So those are our basic settings here, and we'll do a few things later on, but let's get into a script so that we can actually get this moving around our screen. So first thing that we'll do is, just for organization purposes, we'll also add a new folder. And we'll make that a scripts folder. And we'll create a script that's in here. So we'll create our C# script. And whatever you'd like to call it, ship movement. Sure. We'll have a little bit more than the movement on it. We'll include the firing on it and so on. But that should be pretty good there. Okay, so once that opens up, like I said, the first thing we'll do is kind of get it so that we can move the ship around and then just sort of build it from there. So we got our ship movement script. Again, these things, you should be sort of saying to yourself, okay, we probably have to get that rigid body, right? So yeah, I'm just going to do the same thing. So rigid body 2D, and our typical RB2D is probably fine there. For the moment, let's just create two other variables here. We'll make them public so that we can modify them if we need to. We'll create a thrust, and why am I not happy here? Oh, never used. That's strange. We'll figure that out in a second. And then also public float, and we'll make that a turn speed. Okay, so we've got these two variables set up, and down, oh, that's why. Sorry, I am in the wrong spot. There we go. Okay, that's better. Okay, and then we'll get that reference to the rigid body. So RB2D will equal to get the component, and then that component that we'll get, of course, is the rigid body 2D. And we're going to do two things. We're going to do, if you've played the Asteroids game, you notice that there is a force. It sort of accelerates slowly and then gets faster, sort of thing, and then it slows down over time. So that works really well with the adding force like we've done before. But with the turn, we'll make that just sort of a regular turn, more like we did with sort of like well, we didn't make it turn in Pong, but we won't use physics for Pong, right? We didn't use physics in Pong or Breakout. We'll do it sort of the same way with the movement. So what I'm going to do here is create in the update, and we should probably change that to the fixed update because we will be using physics here. So change that to fixed update. What I'm going to do here is create, again, two variables. So a float, and we'll call this one maybe the thrust input. And we'll get that, of course, from the input.getAxis. And I'm just going to use the arrow keys here. Again, you can change this up, that's fine, but I think that's the easiest. And again, a float turn input, and we'll set that to input.getAxis. And this time I'm going to use again the typical keys there, left and right arrow keys, okay, for that. Again, you might be, in your brain thinking, okay, well, maybe I'll use the mouse or something different, whatever you think. So now that we've got the inputs here, we'll actually translate that into movement. So the first thing, we'll get it moving forward here. So what we're going to do is RB2D dot, and we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to use add relative force. So this sort of depends upon if it's already moving, and a little bit different here. So a vector2 dot up, and this will ensure that it's moving sort of forwards here. So it doesn't matter if we rotate, it will always be in the direction of up. So it'll be, in the, I guess, the way the ship's pointing, basically. And so we'll multiply that by the thrust input. Okay, so that's our input there. And then if we need to, we can multiply it by our thrust multiplier. And then just to keep everything in relation to time sort of thing, right? Time dot delta time. Good. So that should get it moving forward. And we might as well, while we're right here, transform. And like I said, this one we're not going to use with forces. We're actually just going to rotate it here. So again, we can just sort of rotate. So transform.rotate. I don't know why I did that. A vector3 dot forward. And again, this will just sort of help it be in the top. So forward is sort of pointing. It's kind of weird, but that's sort of ours is going to be basically our z-axis pointing down. This sort of works here. So forward times turn input, sort of same idea, times turn speed, and then times time dot delta time. So these two basically inputs here, well, two inputs followed by two, I guess, applying those inputs to either forward motion or to the rotation should get our ship to move. Okay, so pretty straightforward in terms of the controls. Let's just save that there, and we'll go back and make sure that this is working. Once we apply the so ship and apply the ship movement script. Did it go on? There we go. And just make sure you set those thrust and turn speeds to values that are not 0. And we'll just take a look here. Again, these numbers here you'll probably have to play around with, but you can see it is moving and it is rotating. Now, one thing I noticed is that it's rotating opposite to how it should be. I could probably go back to the code there, but I think the easiest thing is just to negative, and it's really too slow. So I'm going to go up to -50, and I'm going to put, say, +50 there and try those values. And again, it'd be up to you to just experiment here. Okay, so that's better in terms of the turn speed. At least it's going the right way. And then in terms of going forward and backwards, again, these would be things that you could do to, whatever values you think works better. But that seems to work okay. All right, one thing that I'm going to do is, if you play the original game, there's a little thrust that appears when you apply the forward key. And so let's do that right now, and we'll get that going, because it's really quite a simple little thing. So what I'm going to do is go back to our script here, and then just put in two sort of images. Basically, we're going to put in sort of for our sprite renderer and two sprites, and I'm going to call them basically the flame sprite, right? And then without the flame. So what we're going to do here is set public. Public, and we'll do that as the I called it flame. Sorry, sprite and a flame ship. I called it. You can call it a better name. And then public sprite, and then just the ship. And then to change it, we need to access the sprite renderer. So actually, that doesn't need to be public. So let's just do it there. Sprite renderer. There it is, sprite renderer. And I just called it the SP rend. That's fine. Okay, so just like we did with the rigid body, we have to do the same thing with our renderer. So I'm going to grab that component, the sprite renderer component. There we are. And then what we'll do is we'll default to the regular key, like the regular shape if we don't push on the jet. And then if we do press this key here, the thrust input, we'll basically set it to have that flame there. So pretty straightforward. So I'm just going to come down under here and do an if statement. So if the thrust input is greater than 0, so basically if you're pressing the key, right, then what we'll do is we'll change that sprite renderer. So what I'm going to do here is the sprite renderer dot sprite. I'm going to set that to be the, what did I call it, flame ship. Okay. And then otherwise, right, so just an else here. In all the other situations, it's simply going to be the sprite renderer will be dot sprite will be the regular ship. Good. All right, so let's save that. Hopefully we've got enough time here. Yep, we should be okay. So I've saved it. Let's go to the ship. And what we'll notice is hopefully down here, there will be two spots to put the flame ship and the ship. So I'm simply going to grab those graphics. So we've got our ship. That will be our regular one. Oops, I put it in the wrong spot. There we go. And then this one here for our regular ship. And what you'll notice is that there's your sprite render and there's your sprite. So it'll be simply swapping out those two. So let's take a look here. So it should default to the regular one. Okay. And then as soon as I push the up arrow, you can see that it switches. Okay. Nothing too fancy, but it works there. And you can see that the ship flame is on as I press up the arrow. And as soon as I let go, it disappears. Okay. So that should be pretty good there. We'll stop this video. We got our ship going around. What you'll notice is that we don't have it wrapping. So once it leaves the screen, our camera is fixed, right? As with many old video games, there's no movement of the camera. So because of that, we need the ship to be able to wrap from side to side. So we'll deal with that in the next video.